From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, and coming up today, K-State's A.J. Tarpoff will go over several factors for you cow-calf producers to consider ahead of the upcoming calving season, topics that will be addressed and demonstrated at a series of K-State Calving Schools around Kansas over the next 3 weeks. Then K-State's Greg Aldrich will talk about a unique event being put on by the Grain Science and Industry Department at K-State in early February, which will introduce high school and community college students to the spectrum of high-quality career opportunities in the grain processing field. A fully hands-on experience, as Greg will explain. And later on, with his weekly commentary on rural Kansas, K-State's Gus Vanderhoeven, plus more, here on Agriculture Today. Agricultural producers, landowners, and creditors, you have a partner in your legal and financial needs. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services offers reliable, trusted information and guidance. Whether you need advice for ag credit concerns or are transitioning your operation to the next owner, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services can assist you in making sound decisions for your business. To learn more, call 800-321-3276 or visit us online. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today. Well, with this new calendar year, those of you with a spring calving beef cow herd may well be entering that calving season, those early arrivers anyway, and certainly the calving season will open up in full here in the coming weeks. In advance of that, K-State Research and Extension will be hosting a series of calving schools for you cow-calf producers very soon. In fact, the first in the series takes place this evening in north central Kansas. Conducting these, our guest now, A.J. Tarpoff, Research and Extension Beef Veterinarian here at K-State. Now, A.J., there's a lot to learn yet about calving, even though our producers out there are rather seasoned in this practice, but there are always challenges as well, right?
There are. The challenges come up year in and year out. And regardless if it's your first season calving out cows or you've been doing this for 35 plus years, there's always little tips and tidbits that when we sit down and we can discuss some of these issues, have a better understanding of what is happening to the cow, how it pertains to the calf, and we can pick up these little tips and tidbits and we can discuss these things together so we can end up with more live calves at the end of the season.
Hence the purpose of these meetings. Again, 6 of these coming up, and we will list through the wins and wheres in just a few moments here. As a beef veterinarian, when you step back and look at it, what do you consider the primary issues in, obviously, to avoid dystocia problems?
Avoiding dystocia, it doesn't happen overnight. Okay, it happens the season prior with genetic selection. Okay, properly selecting sires to make sure that we're putting the right animal with the right breeding, and we're going to end up with an animal that can actually birth a normal birth when it comes around to calving time. But not only that, the biggest thing that we forget about sometimes is the nutritional basis of that cow. Okay, we need to have our cow in very good nutrition coming into the calving season so she has enough energy. She has enough of all the essential nutrients to make sure that she is ready to be able to give birth, because it is quite the process. Mm-hmm.
Is it too late to make adjustments in that nutrition here in the third trimester for many of these cows or heifers?
No, actually, a lot of the development happens during the third trimester. So heavily, supplementing them now is as important as it is later in the year, especially when they start lactating. Having a really good nutritional basis prior to them calving is essential to make sure their lactation starts, to make sure calving goes well. So as a veterinarian, I like to talk about the calving and dealing with dystocias, but we have to look at the big picture that it doesn't happen by accident, that is a full year management plan that really turns into success at the end of the year.
And at each of these workshops, you'll be bringing up that nutrition angle then?
Yes, Dr. Justin Wagner will actually be at several of these discussing, feeding the pregnant cow coming into the calving season. So we will be briefly discussing a lot of these different factors that all coincide with calving management.
One of the highlighted features would be how to deal with a problem calving and the techniques that one can employ to make that go as smoothly as possible.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about the tools, okay? What kind of equipment should we have at our disposal? What do we need on hand if we need to assist a calving? The second thing that I really harp on is time frame. Okay? Timing is absolutely critical to make sure that we get a live calf on the ground. So setting up a true time frame that if there is an issue, when do we intervene? How do we intervene? When to call for help? Okay, because at the end of the day, we need to understand our own limitations, and sometimes, yes, we do need to call for help, and the whole point of that is to get a live calf on the ground. Okay, so there will be issues. A lot of producers get really lucky and things go extremely smooth, but from the weather this past week, obviously we can't control everything. There may be difficulties, so having those time frames in mind, when to call for help, how to intervene, and properly using the tools that we have at our disposal to help these animals and help get a live calf on the ground.
Now, there is at least one technique that producers can use to manipulate that timing of calving, having to do with when they feed the herd, right?
Absolutely. So it would all be perfect if 100% of our animals calve during the daylight when we're routinely out checking these cattle every few hours. But if they're going to calve on a 24-hour cycle, it's difficult to get out every few hours during the middle of the night. Yeah. Okay, so one little tidbit is, right around now, if we start feeding our cow herd towards the late evening hours, just before dusk, for whatever the mechanism may be, they end up having a larger percentage born during daylight hours. A lot of it has to do with the different hormones that get released during digestion, but we do know that feeding them in the late evening hours will equate to a higher percentage born during the daylight, which can really help us because calving season can be very difficult on our producers, on our veterinarians. It's if we can get them during the daylight, things can go a lot smoother.
It really is a simple thing, but it is proven to work.
Yes.
And be effective for producers. So something to keep in mind there. You will be at these workshops demonstrating calving assistance techniques and, again, the tools of the trade then, right?
That's absolutely correct. So actually have large scale, actual size calf we'll be utilizing so we can actually show them on a life-size animal. These very lifelike. We can properly show and how to use calving chains, how to properly use a calf puller. So we'll be demonstrating this on full scale. So it gives you a different insight on what's happening on the inside of the animal and how to properly care for these animals.
Now, any number of our producers out there have had the pleasure of pulling a calf in the past, but you still think there's something to be learned, that one can polish those techniques, right?
Absolutely. There's always little tips and tidbits that all of a sudden, pop into your mind whenever you're, trying to manipulate a calf during a hard calving. And one of these little tips about getting a leg forward, if they have a leg back, all of a sudden shows up, and it really ends up really helping the situation immensely. So sharing these tips and tidbits during the calving and also after calving, okay? Proper colostrum intake, how to manage a stressed calf, okay? What are kind of warning signs that we may have an issue with this calf once it hits the ground? And we're going to be discussing all these, and the whole thing is to get live calves born and understand that critical 24 hours after birth, especially how it pertains to colostrum intake.
AJ, is there one particular aspect of assisted calving that seems to be more problematic than the others? Do you run into consistently when you talk with producers?
The biggest thing is a lot of our developing heifers, our pregnant developing heifers, they have a smaller pelvis. Mm-hmm. They're still growing. Even with proper sire selection, we can still run into basically some exhaustion type issues with some of our heifers. And that's where I discussed the time frames, when to intervene, how to intervene. We want them to have these calves naturally. Heifers, of course, we always need a little extra care just because we understand they could have a pretty good sized calf. They may get tired during the calving process, and making sure they mother up. Okay, that's one of the biggest things, regardless of the situation, regardless of the age of animal. We need to make sure these cattle mother up soon after birth, and to make sure that we get adequate colostrum intake, because that really dictates the performance and health of that calf all the way through its productive life.
And once again, one has to stay on top of the colostrum intake right away. And producers understand that, but it's a chore, frankly.
It is a chore, and we'll discuss a little bit, what to have on hand, what type of product to have on hand, if they can suckle or if they can't suckle. Okay, and if we're having an issue with that calf, if they are starting to get dehydrated, they're not drinking, when to call for help as well. Because there are some other things that your veterinarian can do for you to help ensure the health of that calf.
So how to participate in any of these? It's fairly simple, is it not, AJ?
And we will briefly go over where all these meetings are. But we do have RSVPs that are very much, please call in. And a lot of these RSVPs will go to the local extension offices where these meetings are being held.
And it's a free program, right?
Usually a free program, but we will have meals associated with several of these programs. So do anticipate you may have a charge for an evening meal or a lunch meal. But we're here to help educate the producers of Kansas to help them be more profitable into this upcoming year.
Once more, there are 6 of these, and in a moment we will list all of these. They're well scattered throughout the state of Kansas over the coming 3 weeks. Very important that you producers sharpen your calving assistance skills or otherwise learn more about calving management as we head into this pivotal time. For after all, that calf is the paycheck for you producers as cow-calf operators. And AJ, good luck with this series and happy travels in the next 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming over and sharing a few moments with us. AJ Tarpoff, beef veterinarian, K-State Research and Extension. Now, here's the lineup of these calving schools K-State will host in the coming weeks. This evening at the Cloud County Fairgrounds in Concordia. Then this Thursday, January the 4th, at the Oswego Community Center in Oswego. Looking to next week, Tuesday, January the 9th, at Great Bend, the Kansas Wetlands Education Center there, Thursday, January the 11th, at Elkhart, the Morton County Civic Center in far southwest Kansas. Then the week after, Tuesday, January the 16th, at the Norton County 4-H building in Norton. Lastly, Thursday, January the 18th, in Wabaunsee County, Alta Vista, at the Alta Vista Baptist Church there. You can contact the hosting local extension offices for full information, and we'd ask you to go ahead and RSVP your intent to participate in one of these K-State beef calving schools coming up very soon. And we might add, related to this topic, that in the just posted latest edition of the Beef Tips newsletter out of Animal Sciences and Industry here at K-State, there is a checklist for planning and preparing to improve the success of your calving season and your weaned calf crop. AJ's colleague Sandy Johnson penning that particular article. It features some good additional reminders about readying for the calving season. You can find that at ksubeef.org. Again, the Beef Tips newsletter for January at ksubeef.org. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
Agriculture and food systems are the main drivers of the Kansas economy, but must be improved in order to feed the world's growing population. How are we going to do so? Reduce food loss, find ways to preserve grasslands, and help families stretch their dollars. Global food systems is one of the 5 grand challenges K-State Research and Extension is addressing. To learn more, visit www.ksre.ksu.edu.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and on this segment, we'll inform you of an event coming up in early February for potential students of the Grain Science and Industry Department here at K-State. And it will, this special day, profile the many things that department can offer in the way of education and career opportunities. With the full details here on what's going to happen on February the 3rd, Greg Aldrich is alongside. He's a research associate professor in Grain Science and Industry here at K-State. And we might note at the outset, Greg, that this department is a world leader in this area and has been renowned for decades upon decades, right?
Yes, exactly. Eric, thank you for the introduction. And the Grain Science Department here at Kansas State University is one of the only ones around the globe. We've had an exclusive sort of spot for many decades as the only program, but there are many other programs around the world and in the country that have taken on some of our graduates and have created some of those same components within their universities, within their food science, or even in their food engineering departments. So while we're still relatively exclusive as it relates to grains and education, there are some others that are nipping at our heels and starting to catch up with us.
And that's a good thing. The genealogy still reaches back to K-State.
Exactly.
It's worldwide now.
Exactly. Most of those students have been educated at some point in their past through some exposure to K-State, whether it be an undergraduate or a graduate degree, or even a number of the short courses that we teach out at our Institute International Grains program.
Well, the department on February the 3rd will open its doors for this special day. You're calling it Feeding the Future. Mm-hmm. What's the orientation of this event and its purpose, Greg?
Well, the idea here is that many students, prospective students around the country as well as in our own state are unaware that there are opportunities for their education and career in this area of converting grains from Kansas and elsewhere into flour and bread and other consumables. And so what we're trying to do is create an opportunity for young people to see that there are career and maybe even some interesting new things that they can do in their day-to-day lives. We're looking at trying to welcome students that are either in high school, that are looking at colleges, whether they be sophomores, juniors, or seniors that haven't decided what they want to do with their lives, or even students that may be studying at junior colleges, and quite possibly students that are here on the K-State campus in Manhattan that maybe haven't made a decision for their full matriculation. So the idea here is to bring students in, give them a chance to see up close and personal, firsthand, literally firsthand, what we do in this whole arena of processing grains into food and feed, and to give them some background and depth to understand what it is they might be able to do with that as a career.
And before we talk about the particulars of the agenda, grain science is beyond milling and baking. It's got more depth to it than that, and you hope to express that and pass that along during this special day.
Absolutely. So the theme that we chose was something that's somewhat cliche to areas in our industry, feeding the future, but we really wanted to get students to start to think beyond this notion of just manufacturing or turning grain into flour. The idea here is that each of the students has an altruistic opportunity in their future to be able to produce food in a sustainable fashion. And one of the things that we're talking about today is that by 2050, the world's population is going to be somewhere in excess of 9 billion people. And there's concern of how we're going to feed those hungry mouths. One of the things that's going on in the area of grains is we know that we can continue to produce more. We're getting more and more efficient at it. And we have an opportunity to educate young men and women on sustainable food and calorie intake. That's going to be able to help with their future here locally, but also feeding the hungry folks from around the globe. And that's the interesting thing for me as I came into the grain sciences area, is that how international this program is and how we have in our department this dramatic impact on food and consumption of grain-based diets around the globe. And we have an opportunity here to educate young men and women on how that they can make their future possible by providing food to the masses.
So then, how will this day unfurl? What's the lineup going to be like?
Well, the idea here is to bring students and prospects in, and some of their families, into the Schellenberger Hall here on K-State campus in the morning, and we'll give a quick introduction to our program, and then we'll quickly divide up into 4 groups, and they'll rotate through those 4 groups with some hands-on experiences. So part of the teams will be doing themselves personally, doing some milling. They'll take grain, cereals like wheat, and they'll turn those into flour of various grades. Some of them then will move into working in the bakery lab to be able to make confections and bread and pretzels and those sorts of things. We'll also have a pellet mill operating in the lab, and so they can come in and make rabbit chow if they have some connection to livestock or even pets. And then this is my area. We're going to actually go into the lab and make some dog biscuits. So the students will have some of that literal firsthand touch and feel connection to the grains and the grain products, turn those into edible food items that they can share with their family or their furry friends, in my case. And then we're going to teach a few things along the way about those principles. In addition to that, we're also going to have some judging competitions, some things that they can learn about how to evaluate these various aspects of of flour and baking, and there'll also be some creative opportunities where they can decorate and show their expressive creative side.
So that part of the program ought to have great appeal on its own.
Oh, yeah.
There's more.
I'm hoping that everybody finds it as much fun as I do to get in there and really literally mix it up. Mm-hmm. And then we'll have lunch somewhere in the middle of there, and then in the afternoon, we'll move the whole group out to our North Campus complex, the Grain Science Complex, and we'll start at the International Grains Program Institute facility, and then we'll split the groups back up, and they'll go to each of our various full-scale facilities. So we have the Hal Ross flour mill, the feed mill, and then the extrusion laboratory. And they'll go through each of those to see from where they were in the morning to the full-scale unit and how that all fits together. So from bench top to a full-scale manufacturing. And then we'll conclude the afternoon with some awards, some prizes, and an ice cream social. There'll also be an optional tour for the Wheat Innovation Center, which is right next door. So if folks want to stick around for a little bit longer, they can see wheat being produced from the greenhouse all the way through the bake lab.
And everything you just described, state-of-the-art, world-class facility.
Absolutely. So you won't find this on any other campus around the world. This is the top of the top.
The point being that you hope that young people leave with the notion that there are bountiful career opportunities in grain science and industry.
Absolutely. We want to appeal to those students and share with them the idea that grains are something that they may not have thought about as a career choice, but every one of them eats pizza. They all have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They all have some connection to tortillas somewhere throughout their day. And I want them to walk away after that experience knowing that not only is it fun to eat and fun to make, but it could be a great career choice.
Again, for high schoolers, for community college students, for students not committed to a major on the campus itself here at K-State or elsewhere for that matter, this is designed for all of those young folk. And how to participate, Greg? What are the procedures?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's free, so that's the most important part. It's you come and we'll be your host for the day. We'll make sure and feed you lunch and give you plenty of opportunities to have beverages for the day and experiences. To register for this, we need them to call Brenda Heptig, who is in the Grain Science Department in charge of undergraduate programs. Her phone number is 785-532-4051, or you can email Brenda at B, as in boy, Heptig, H-E-P, T, as in Tom, I-G, as in go. So B, Heptig, at ksu.edu.
Excellent. And we'll repeat those contacts. This will be an exceptional opportunity to learn all about the grain science and industry discipline, as well as the career possibilities under that discipline for young people to explore, and it'll be loaded with information, hands-on activities, the whole gamut. On Saturday, February the 3rd, here on the K-State campus. It's a well-crafted day indeed, and Greg, good luck with it. Thanks for the preview here.
Well, thank you very much, Eric.
He's a research associate professor, grain science and industry here at K-State. That's Greg Aldrich with more on this Feeding the Future Day for Young People, hosted by the department. Again, Saturday, February the 3rd. Do register and save your spot as a young person or a parent of same. Contacting Brenda Heptig one of two ways. 785-532-4051 is her phone number, 785-532-4051, or you can email her at bheptig@kstate.edu, BHEPTIG @kstate.edu. And we'll be back with more after these moments away. You're listening to Agriculture Today. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. This is the K-State Radio Network, and welcome back to Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Moving on now to today's agricultural news headlines for you, courtesy in part of DTN. Well, the Kansas legislature soon will reconvene for the 2018 session. Todd Domer tells us here while the budget and education will be the primary focus in the state capitol, there are some agricultural-specific issues that are likely to be debated.
Legislators will be faced with passing a new school finance law as required in a Kansas Supreme Court ruling from October 2017. The court found the new school funding bill passed by the 2017 legislature was inadequate in terms of funding and how the money was apportioned. The court has given legislators until April 30th of this year to come up with a new school finance law. The 2017 bill was funded by a state income tax increase. Meeting the court's mandate likely would require more revenue. On the agriculture front, items expected to be discussed by the legislature will include proposed changes to the state's noxious weed laws, increasing pet animal facility fees, allowing the transferability of deer permits, and agricultural zoning issues. Many of these issues were held over after not being resolved during the 2017 Kansas legislative session. Increasing pet animal facility fees is an issue of significance to the livestock industry. If the fees are not increased, the pet animal program soon will consume most of the general fund money dedicated to the Kansas Department of Agriculture's Division of Animal Health. This drain on the agency's general fund monies could cut critical livestock health programs short. I'm Todd Domer.
We have just entered 2018. There's already speculation, though, about spring crop planting plans, at least by one leading USDA economist. More on that from the USDA's Gary Crawford.
With most all the 2017 crops out of the fields and a chunk of those crops already sold, farmers are now thinking about how much of what crops they'll plant this spring. Now, last season,
we had 90.4 million acres planted to corn and 90.2 planted to soybeans.
But soybean prices have been relatively strong, and so USDA's chief economist Rob Johansson says this year look for 91 million acres of corn.
And 91 million acres for soybeans, so that'll be a total of 182 million acres for those two crops.
Which would be a new record. But wheat, those plantings this past season already at record lows, and Johansson says for this season,
for wheat, we would expect to see an additional million acres going out of production.
Taking wheat to only 45 million acres. It was 70 million just 20 years ago. For cotton, plantings last season were up 25% from 2016 at a little over 12.5 million acres. But for 18,
we expect that to come down to 11.2 million acres.
But again, still up 1 million from 2016's cotton acreage. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
The annual U.S. cattle inventory numbers out of the January report are eagerly anticipated, not only to confirm what's happened to the nation's beef cow herd in 2017, but for indications of what lies ahead in this new year. Oklahoma State University livestock specialist Darrell Peel, a frequent guest on this program, says that America's beef cow herd began its recent expansion in 2014, and from the January 14 low of 29 million head, the herd has expanded by 2 million head plus to the January 17 level of 31 million head. Darrell saying there are numerous indicators of beef cow herd expansion continuing this past year, but that we won't know for sure until that cattle inventory report issued by the USDA comes out late this month. The potential for herd growth starts with available replacement heifers. On January the 1st of last year, some 6.4 million replacement heifers reported, representing about 20% of the beef cow inventory. Darrell saying this was the third largest replacement heifer percentage. Of the total replacement heifers, 4 million were expected to calve in 2017, a record number of reported heifers calving since the data became available in 2001. Darrell goes on to say these numbers confirm considerable potential for herd expansion and indicated producer intentions to continue adding to cow inventories. The great unknown, he says, is whether producers adjusted their intentions during this past year. Darrell believes there's little doubt that herd expansion continued some in 2017, albeit at a slower pace than 2016. The jump in heifer and beef cow slaughter, both reflecting a return to more typical relative slaughter rates, though. He currently estimates the 18 beef cow herd will be up 1.5% to 2% over January of 17. Expansion rates above or below that level are possible, he says, though expansion above 2.5% would be difficult to reconcile with current numbers, in his words. Expansion slower than 1.5% possible. It would suggest, though, an unusually large percentage of pregnant heifers available on January the 1st that did not, in fact, enter the herd. If that's true, Darrell says, that begs the question of what would have happened to those. And Americans are set to eat more meat in 2018 than ever before. To be precise, the average consumer will eat 222 pounds of red meat and poultry this year, according to the USDA. That would surpass the record set in 2004. Meantime, domestic production will surpass 100 billion pounds for the first time as livestock producers again expand herds on the back of cheap feed grain. If you look at the items that consumers say they want more of in their diet, protein tops the list, according to a Houston-based food industry advisor for NPD Group, David Potalaran. Many Americans actively shunning carbohydrates, he says, in favor of protein, though any health benefits might be outweighed by the sheer volume of meat, eggs, and dairy being consumed. While the government is recommending that adults eat 5 to 6.5 ounces per day of protein, the USDA is forecasting that the average person will consume almost 10 ounces of meat and poultry each day here in 2018. That would be a sharp turnaround from 2007 through 2014, at a time period where per capita meat and poultry demand slumped 9% as rising corn-based ethanol demand and the drought sent commodity prices sharply higher. Though cattle and hogs are still far cheaper than their 2014 peak, prices could still rebound. U.S. meat exports have soared as the global economy improves, outpacing the gains in domestic demand. Meat substitutes have gained attention in recent years amid concerns about the impact of a carnivorous diet on health, animal welfare, and the environment. Protein from plants, insects, or cultured meat are a top food trend to watch, though the category is not expected to significantly dent animal product sales just yet. That's according to a November report out from CoBank. That's a quick glimpse to today's agricultural news headlines for you. You're listening to Agriculture Today. We'll take one final break, and when we come back, the weekly entry on another facet of life in rural Kansas from K-State's Gus Vander Hoeven. Next, here on Agriculture Today.
Have you ever thought about where your food comes from? If you're thinking the grocery store, think again. Facts show that the American farmer feeds more than 129 people.
They are continually increasing and improving their operations. A wide variety of crops and livestock are grown in Kansas as well as the United States, providing food to your dinner plate.
Next time you see a farmer or rancher, thank them. For more information, contact K-State Research and Extension.
This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen. This is our state, Kansas.
I wished some of those seeds would germinate along the wooded edge on the hill.
That's Gus Vander Hoeven of Kansas State University with comment on life in rural Kansas.
It's already the 3rd of January. The year 2018 has started. My wish, a good 2018 to all of us. The word good is a very good word. We do not always deserve to be happy. You can't be happy for a whole year, every day. It just doesn't work that way. So my wish to you, have a good 2018. You might have to work at it, but that doesn't matter. Starting tomorrow, only 362 days left. That's plenty of time to make a good year. I did not go to the farm this year to pick out a special cedar tree to become our Christmas tree. Instead of a tree, we had a big earthen pot filled with beautiful holly branches with plenty of red berries, showing us love from North Carolina. It's still standing, but soon needs to go as the red berries are now dropping, and we don't want to mash them into the carpet. The branches will go outside for the birds to pick and digest the berries, if they so choose. Maybe they don't trust them, as they're not familiar with the true holly tree. I wish some of those seeds would germinate along the wooded edge on the hill. But our soil is not the soil the holly needs to grow, which is good and as it should be. We are in Kansas. That takes me to another timely experience. Under the holly tree was a gift package. I opened it as it had my name on it. It was beautifully wrapped as well as perfectly packaged, so the tall mug would not break. It was a ceramic travel mug with a chocolate theme. It was a Hershey's miniature. We all have enjoyed Hershey's chocolate. I love that chocolate. But when I think Hershey, I think of their huge and beautiful gardens. They use a lot of Dutch bulbs, tulips, much of which we supplied when I worked for the Dutch Flower Bulb Company in North Carolina. But that is a long time ago. But back to the Hershey's packaging, with a lot of information printed on it. One serving would have 160 calories. Who cares on a cold day? It showed total fat, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrates, and protein, as well as vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. All things you surely want to know at Christmas time. It's also listed the ingredients. All I will mention is that it contains soy. I'll come back to the soybeans. But this struck me as I continued to read. It is distributed by Gallery, Hebron, Kentucky. That must be the finished product, the gift. But the candy is manufactured in Mexico. The mug is made in China. It's packaged in the USA. But I must remember the old Dutch saying, one should not look a horse that is given to you in the mouth. And I don't. I will enjoy using a mug filled with hot chocolate, but reading all that and more does make me think. Now, back to the soy or soybeans. I wonder if they were Kansas beans. Did we grow them? Did our soil, our farmers produce them? We prepared the soil, the land, rolled out the big planters, and dropped the seed at the right depth and the correct distance apart. So many seeds per acre placed in Kansas soil up and down the field. If it was a rectangular or square field, perfectly straight rows. If it was sloping or irregular, maybe the field was planted on the contour. Of course, beans we plant in the spring. But I see the same now in our wheat, the rows. The wheat fields show the rows planted straight all the way to the horizon, out west, or on a contour in more hilly country or uneven fields. It is this time of the year when the wheat has come up that I love to gaze out over the rows of crop fields, the wheat. And it is when I see a break in the straight or curved row that I think, oh, there for a moment the spout got blocked and seed did not move down. Sometimes it's only a short distance where there is an empty row. But sometimes the spout stayed blocked for a distance before it broke loose or was noticed and opened. The result, a long open row with no seed planted, and now not even green cover, but a dark earth strip. I know you have to trust the machine, and maybe modern machinery have monitors. The old ones, you had to watch. You looked, stopped, and checked. When we walked behind planter pulled by horse, we looked from box to horse to line up to the other outside row from the last passage. And before we had the horse-drawn planter, people sowed from a sack or a trough worn across the shoulder and hanging in front, so that one hand or both hands could grab seed and gracefully spread it out. Van Gogh, the painter, painted that scene. It's nearly biblical, the sower. As a youngster, I have sown and planted a small field that way, later harrowed in with harrow and horse. Sowing seed by hand holds a graceful rhythm. Today, farming is a science, but I still see it as an art, now on a different scale. I hope that 2018 will not show bare stripes or bare ground in your fields. Have a good year.
Gus Vander Hoeven of Kansas State University with his weekly commentary on rural Kansas. With that, this Wednesday edition comes to a close. Thanks for listening in. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.